In the past 5 years, we have distributed a total of $5 million. Indeed, affirmatively rewarding becomes more challenging with each passing year. As soon as word got out that Mike Rose's home had been visited by investigators, the fans were filled with panic. The very modest, funny, and hardworking Dirty Jobs host had always been secretive about his personal life. Everyone is focusing on what was found at his Maryland residence, though. An unexpected development during what was initially a routine home assessment stunned even the high-ranking officials. An enigma in his own house now surrounded the man who had spent years exposing America's deepest secrets. If you want to be prepared to be amazed by what happens next, hit subscribe and enable notifications before we expose what they found. Hey Mikey, living an honest life, demonstrating the importance of hard effort and the pride in filthy work has always been central to Rose's story. Nobody anticipated, though, that his house would be the site of a mystery fit for one of his TV shows. Nothing happened until the neighbors took note. Strange goings on the grounds of his property. By evening, local police enforcement and private specialists had come, and trucks had arrived early in the morning. Word quickly spread. Some people thought it was an intruder. Rumors circulated regarding a secret vault, but the reality was distant, unfamiliar person. Even the most seasoned investigators were taken aback by the sight that greeted them when they arrived at Mike's house. Someone has obviously been hiding things or conducting experiments in the once cozy and neatly organized house, enveloped with antique film reels, scribbled notes, and containers marked as secret discovery archives. There was a connection between each one and previously unseen video from Dirty Jobs, Somebody's Gotta Do It, and other shows. Several of these containers had dates on them that didn't match, which only added to the strangeness. At any time that Mike is known to be filming, it seemed like there were recordings from mines, labs, and even secret military locations that documented jobs that no one had ever heard of. When officials discovered letters concealed inside a cabinet, their level of alarm grew. Communication directed to Mike from individuals posing as whistleblowers, cautioning him against the perils of airing exposés of specific companies. At first, the authorities assumed it was just filming memorabilia, but then they noticed something wasn't right. It seems that every time they opened a single box, it would lead to yet another level of concealed significance, as if someone had been purposefully concealing proof of a more profound narrative. They kept digging through the debris when they noticed a steel door at the end of his hallway that was shut. The actual shock, though, was behind it. Mike Rose's residence didn't initially have a steel door. With its computerized keypad and bolts for reinforcement, it appeared industrial. The cops first assumed it was only a personal safe room, a security measure that many famous people take covertly, yet there was a greater complex requiring not just a fingerprint scanner but also a numerical code for authentication. Mike was composed, albeit noticeably anxious, upon his return home and observation of the situation. He politely asked the crew to cease shooting and asked for some space before letting anyone else near the room. However, with the help of the authorities, someone had unlocked the door. A darkly lighted, windowless room with soundproof padding bordered the walls, and shelves upon shelves of hard drives, cameras, and hundreds of vintage notebooks were within. Photographs of regular people that Mike had met while working in unclean jobs were tacked to one wall. Those who work in mining, fishing, welding, and sanitation, annotations, names, dates, and enigmatic symbols connected stories underlying those familiar smiles. According to one investigator, it seemed like a labyrinth of obvious secrets. In terms of one of the items discovered was a worn journal that had Mike's personal notes. In it, he detailed stories that the network had refused to run, projects that had been canceled, and industries that had wanted to keep the truth hidden. On an additional shelf were what seemed to be early versions of various bizarre implements, some constructed from discarded metal and others still in the planning stages, put together. Some of these things were eventually determined to be air sensors and custom-built cameras, which are used to record subterranean or hazardous areas without a staff. One VHS cassette marked with red markers stood out as the most unsettling find. Episode 0, The First Employment. The video didn't depict your average construction site when they played it again. Rather, it showed Mike in a lonely place, looking quiet and solemn by what appeared to be an abandoned building. He mentioned on the video that some jobs should remain hidden. The video cut off suddenly. The study took a wholly different tone after that. Investigators began to suspect they might be dealing with more than just a long-lost TV project once they found the enigmatic footage. The footage, however blurry, was disturbing. It depicted Mike Rao clad in armor devoid of any network logo, operating among a mysterious network of tunnels, subtle caution signs behind him read, restricted area, biohazard clearance required. The tape's timestamp was from before the first season of Dirty Jobs by around 2 years, therefore this footage predates the airing of his show. Mike was coy about his involvement in an independent documentary film named The Forgotten Trades before he finally admitted to it when pressed about Dirty Jobs. The purpose, he clarified, was in order to reveal hazardous and derelict factories in rural America America, institutions abandoned without taking responsibility. However, he asserted that the discovery made by him and his team was strictly forbidden from him discussing it further. A little break appeared in his voice as he said, "Our investigation revealed something that shouldn't have been there," he whispered. Something the e-public wasn't meant to see. His story was backed by journals found in his vault, which contained entries regarding funding withdrawals without warning, missing film, and threats from unnamed officials. An odd phone number was even mentioned on a few sites, summons at 3 a.m. Mike began covertly recording everything and was even hiding physical copies at home. However, the most shocking aspect wasn't even that. Police discovered a little safe concealed behind a false panel within the identical steel room. Inside were several sealed vials labeled with chemical hazard symbols and coded serial numbers, which they uncovered upon opening the container. The Department of Environmental Safety was summoned to examine the objects. Despite Mike's assertions that they were set pieces from an unaired show concerning garbage disposal, the samples were carefully removed and the property was temporarily sealed up within a few days. After neighbors complained about unidentified vehicles dropping by late at night, the journalists began to circle the area. At the same time, Mike stopped making public appearances and stopped responding to messages sent to his internet account. His social media suddenly became inundated with fans, posing inquiries. However, his sole contribution amounted to a single syllable, whether you prefer to ignore or embrace it. Truth inevitably surfaces. His fans went into overdrive trying to decipher the true contents of his residence after seeing that one post. The more Mike said nothing, the more others started to speculate. Strange coincidences noted by former Dirty Jobs crew members, online fan clubs, and forums all started sharing their observations. Episode that was abruptly taken off air, interviews in which Mike appeared preoccupied, and instances in which he hinted to initiatives that ultimately came to a close for reasons he was unable to disclose. Investigators from the media delved more into the long-lost trades, the purported documentary that came before Dirty Jobs. They uncovered references to it in dusty festival catalogs and preliminary production notes. A disused facility that processed industrial biomaterial was featured in an episode shot in rural Pennsylvania, according to one entry. Mike and his little crew allegedly captured an unintentional scene that was eventually removed from the final cut. It was difficult to track down anybody who had served on the crew. Many chose not to be interviewed, and rumor has it that two of them even relocated abroad shortly after the project ended. More disturbing was found by forensic specialists inside his house. Project MR Archive 7, a hard disk, was found concealed behind a bookshelf. After decryption, it revealed unseen footage spanning almost 20 years, along with hundreds of files, emails, and voice memos. No apparent harm came from most of the video. Some bits were unsettling, so I deleted them. Others included nasty job segments, trip notes, and behind-the-scenes chuckles, fuzzy images of factories, warped voices telling Mike to get away, and film of faceless people following him around airports and parking lots. As they continued to descend, it appeared as if Mike had been the target of covert monitoring for a long time. Curiously, even after Mike asserted that he had disconnected the devices, some of the file information revealed that they had been read remotely. Regardless of the circumstances, it was evident that several groups were keen in retaining these findings. Laid to rest, the media was already in a tailspin. The Rao files became a term used by conspiracy theorists, while late-night shows poked fun at him and his ardent supporters. However, rumors circulated amongst those in the know that high-ranking government officials had secretly dropped by the Dirty Jobs company's production office, amassing any remaining archives linked to the vintage cassettes. Mike appeared to be being caught up by whatever it was that he had discovered a long time ago. As time went on, the riddle got deeper. Official remarks lacked specificity. Mike Rowe's residence allegedly included environmentally sensitive goods, according to authorities, who did not provide any other specifics. At the same time, people with intimate ties to the Dirty Jobs group started releasing details which painted a darker image. The following statement was made by an unnamed former cameraman during an early Mike went against the network's wishes in 2003 and persisted on visiting a shuttered processing plant. He mentioned receiving a letter regarding it. Someone who had worked there before vanished was something the cameraman remembered. After 2 days of filming, they suddenly stopped. The video was never shown. It was said that when asked about it in retrospect, Mike dismissed it as an unproductive anecdote. But now it's impossible to ignore. What with all that archived footage, sealed vials, and episode 0? Returning to his dwelling place after analyzing the hard disks, experts discovered encrypted folders that required many days to decrypt. The contents included detailed notes on secret industrial procedures that were never shown to the public, chemical spills, sickness among workers, and purported cover-up spanning multiple states. Nothing in the files was merely academic, they served as proof. Using his position as a TV host to gain access to restricted places and speak with employees no journalist could reach, Mike had been clandestinely collecting it for years. Surprisingly, many of those individuals subsequently vanished, changed their identities, or passed away in a questionable manner. Mike finally spoke out in a one-on-one interview with a freelance journalist as the results came to light. He sounded serious. "I wanted people to see what happens when honesty meets profit," stated the businessman. However, there were a number of jobs that posed significant risks to air. He didn't go into detail, but he did imply that influential companies pushed the network to air news segments that revealed too much. Mike allegedly relocated to a secluded area after that interview and withdrew once again. The involvement of multiple government agencies was later verified by authorities, not to press charges, but to examine the evidence he had collected. Everyone was wondering the same thing. Had Mike Rose stumbled onto an unintended secret? Alternately, was he shielding the individuals he had devoted his life to defending? After combing through Mike Rose's home, detectives uncovered a treasure trove of tangible relics, a database of handwritten notes spanning 2 decades, and more than 4 gigabytes of data. The media was informed that historical and environmental records had been located, but sources close to the investigation disclosed that there was actually much more controversial. Included in the materials were taped confessions from whistleblowers who had made brief appearances in the first few episodes of Dirty Jobs. These individuals had claimed to have witnessed unsafe working conditions, unlawful disposal of hazardous waste, and even military contracts that were passed off as civilian initiatives. There were certain files that had weird words and phrases that did not appear in any official documents, such as the Red Sand dossier and the missing pipeline. The trail disappeared into secret documents every time investigators attempted to follow it. The audio samples discovered in the safe were even odd. They contained distorted phone calls and untraceable sounds. Someone is trying to tell Mike not to probe more and to put the video where it belongs. Experts in forensic science validated the timestamps. His filming years included the recording of these late-night calls. The fact that Mike had recorded everything so precisely astonished them. Each and every caution, it was as though he had anticipated that the truth would seek him out at some point. At the same time, the Dirty Jobs crew issued a reserve statement reading, "Mike Rowe has always sought truth via labor. We ask for privacy while authorities conclude their inquiry." However, the admirers were not content. What Mike found in UO Exposed were among the trending hashtags on social media. Even Mike's ex-co-hosts started dropping hints that he knew stuff we weren't prepared to believe. Reporters sought to get in touch with Mike personally, but he refused to reveal his whereabouts. His Maryland neighborhood neighbor asserted that he came back late one night to retrieve a single box from the residence before vanishing once more. Unidentified cars were seen around the site the same week, and a private security detail cordoned off the area. It was obvious that he didn't trust anyone else with whatever was inside that last box. Some think it might have included his journal's missing pages. There are some who believe it included evidence of a massive cover-up and that its release would risk people's lives. In any case, Mike's remaining silent was now the most noticeable aspect of the narrative. Then Mike Rowe materialized again. He broke his quiet for weeks before posting a mysterious video message with the headline, "A few things you should know, nothing showy," just Mike sitting in his usual laid-back manner, cool and collected yet with a weighty expression on his face. "The life tales of ordinary Americans have been my passion," he started. "Folks who rise before the sun and set after the moon. However, there are instances when the facts you uncover is not broadcast. Reason being, it poses a threat rather than being dull." After a brief pause, he said, "I didn't expect it to follow me home." Despite the video's brief duration, it shocked his following base. The probe was never explicitly brought up in his remarks, but they appeared to provide credence to the rumors that something in his archives had prompted influential people to step in. The video vanished without a trace inside a few of hours. Mike stared into the camera and uttered, "If you ever wonder," right before it ended. According to others who had downloaded it, the post mysteriously disappeared, leaving news outlets frantically searching for an explanation. One of the recovered drives had government-related data, according to a whistleblower who worked inside the investigation team, secretive labor schemes that had been contracted. According to allegations, Mike recorded sites where these laborers lived in filthy and cruel conditions, which, if broadcast, would have ruined their reputations. The fact that these same facilities were associated with waste further added to the unease. Management firms that were featured in the first several episodes of Dirty Jobs, all of a sudden those seemingly innocuous tales regarding sewers, grease traps, and workplace cleanliness took on a darker hue. As far as anyone could tell, Mike had discovered damning proof of business irresponsibility. Censoring him was the only way to save those in charge. Some fans pleaded with him to come out, while others showered him with supportive notes in his past posts. Unfortunately, Mike had disappeared once again, and not even his closest co-workers were aware of his whereabouts. Those in charge of the evidence behind the scenes started getting cautions to quit digging from unknown sources. Certain files disappeared from encrypted databases. Blank data logs, as if intentionally deleted, replaced others. But there was still one fact. What Mike Rowe had discovered in his house was more than startling. Something about it was supposed to remain hidden from the world. A few weeks down the road, the hype around Mike Rowe at a fever pitch. Major media sources engaged in a theory-strewn arms race. He was accused by some of having discovered secret environmental documents. According to others, he possessed proof of secret testing procedures, subterranean throughout industrial areas. The final video, titled "The Job I Couldn't Show You," appeared on a tiny anonymous video sharing channel, ending all conjecture. There was Mike's distinctive voice in the upload, although the video was blurry and sped up so it started with him making his way through a long tunnel under the city with a weak torch. His voice was steady yet determined. His message was that he had spent years demonstrating to Americans the need of perseverance. I neglected to demonstrate, however, what occurs when one's job becomes an enemy of their own. There was a low-volume hum that accompanied the camera's sweep across corroded pipes and chemical containers that were leaking. "This was shot a long time ago," Mike went on to say. "There was never an intention for this footage to air. Apparently, they felt it was too honest to air on television. Possibly they were correct. Documents, vintage photos of employees, and aerial views of faraway industrial locations, all linked to businesses that are still in business today." As the screen flickered and transitioned to different scenes, he noted that we are surrounded by occupations that contain stories. When compared to in a literal sense, after one line of text, the clip faded to black. Keeping silent was the actual filthy work. Shortly after going popular, the video suddenly vanished from all major platforms at the same time. We terminated the original uploader's channel and met with any riploads that were made, with copyright removals representing the hallmark of national media protection. Although its authenticity was never verified, witnesses claimed to have seen Mike, only older and more worn down, but it was undeniably him. A few days later, his home in Maryland was formally marked as abandoned, and all of his possessions were removed to a place that cannot be named. Unidentified trucks whisked away the reporters who had set up camp outside the residence. Nighttime building noises were reported by some. Some people said that the house was being refurbished and stripped to hide its past. The enigma persisted, though. Members of the Dirty Jobs crew who had left the show started posting coded messages online with images of their gloves covered in mud and abandoned tunnels. The captions read, "Some things never stay buried." Fans took these posts as symbolic homage to their buddy and host. Sometime after that, a little box showed up at a Baltimore news station. The message inside said, "The truth isn't lost, it's merely waiting for someone courageous enough to dig," and was signed by an unknown individual. A USB stick with unreleased footage from Dirty Jobs was found next to it, moments that are touching, funny, and incredibly genuine, depicting Mike assisting regular people in the most difficult circumstances possible. Nothing esoteric or hidden, only the essence of the program he adored. Many saw it as his parting present, serving as a gentle reminder that the true protagonists were the hardworking individuals and not the corrupt or terrified ones. As of this now, nobody knows where Mike Rowe is. Some think he's gone off the grid to live a life of seclusion. Still, some maintain that he's quietly exploring and isn't going anywhere to reveal facts that no television station will run. In any event, there is certainty about one thing. The contents and revelations about Mike Rowe itself made the discovery at his house all the more surprising. A man who, even in the face of overwhelming odds, never gave up seeking justice for the downtrodden, never stopped seeking the truth, and never ceased demonstrating that even in the most pitiful places, there is dignity and